Hello everybody, welcome to Midweek Matchups from the Cloudy Sky Fantasy Football Show, Episode 1. So what can you expect from Midweek Matchups? Well, generally speaking, it's going to be a review of the weekend's games. We'll be able to look at some stats and details from the FF Stuff Match Centre. We'll have a look at the upcoming fixtures, whether they be midweek or the next weekend. But before all of that, in the lead up to the big kickoff on Friday, we thought we'd get stuck into questions that everybody sent in preparation for Cloud Fantasy Football. So without further ado, let's get into it. Thanks everybody for sending in questions. We've had enough to split them up into 4 categories regarding the game, the deadlines, the strategy, and the players. So let's look at the game first. So the first question, is it cloud or cloudy? I've heard both. So the game itself is called Cloud Fantasy Football, and it was a spin-off really from the Sky game, which was discontinued. So between myself and FF Stuff, we've created the game for everybody to play that's very similar to Sky. But when it came to the naming of the channel, Cloud Sky didn't sound very good. So we thought Cloudy Sky was a lot easier for people to sort of remember and get their heads around, and that's where the channel became the Cloudy Sky Fantasy Football Show. So can you still join the game? Yes, of course you can. We're going to be accepting entries up until 7:15 on Friday. At the end of the show, I'll go through again where people can go to sign up and how to enter. Do I need a laptop? I've only got a mobile and an iPad. No, you don't need a laptop. Mobile or iPad are fine. The only thing you will need to be careful of is if you're using a mobile and using Safari app, it's difficult to find the TFF team ID. If you use Chrome on there, absolutely straightforward. So what's the reason for needing a TFF address? Well, that's because in phase 1 of Cloud Fantasy Football, we needed a game engine to be able to make the game work and happen for you all to play. And the easiest for us to use for that was the Telegraph Fantasy Football. Everybody has 5 teams that they're allowed to play in TFF, so it's quite straightforward for people to allocate one of those to the cloud. So there's 2 things that we need to have, and I've put them both on the screen here. You need to have your TFF team ID, which if you open the address bar in Chrome on either a laptop, a phone or an iPad or any other similar device, you'll be looking for the 3, 4 or 5 digit number after the team in the address bar. The other thing you need to note is on your TFF team is to make sure it's set to public and not private. Only teams that are set to public can be entered into Cloud Fantasy Football because it's the only way that we can see which players you've got. So next question, I see same day transfer can be made in TFF. Is the Cloud FF game sophisticated enough to detect if somebody has done this? Well, rest assured, it is sophisticated enough. We will be taking everybody's teams at the first kickoff of every day subsequent to the first day on Friday. So if you do make a transfer for somebody that plays later on a Saturday, say in the 5:30 game or on a Sunday 4:30 game, it won't count for that player for that week if there's an earlier match. So the deadlines will generally be 12:30 on a Saturday, 2 o'clock on a Sunday, and 8 o'clock on either a Friday or a Monday. If there's midweek games, it'll be different according to whichever time the kickoff is, and there will be some Sundays where it might be 12 o'clock. There might be some Saturdays where it's 3 o'clock if there's not an early game. All will be available on the planner. You'll be able to see who the early games are. So, signed up, what happens next? Well, as long as you've got everything correct, your form has been filled out, we've been checking behind the scenes, and anybody that's not got correct data, I've been emailing and contacting to make sure that they have got it correct. Once you've done that, everything else is fine and you'll be good to go. So the next section was deadlines. What is the cut-off to enter your team on Friday? Well, for this week only, the cut-off is 7:15. The reason being that we need to get all of the data into the system so we can see who everybody has selected. So why is the deadline before the first match kicks off? Well, for that very reason. We can't scrape all of the data properly if we're still accepting teams up until when the match kicks off. So it's very straightforward. For this day only, you need to get your team in before 7:15. The vast majority of people will have picked their team already. The only thing you're going to need to worry about is whether you've got a player that's playing on Friday in the Manchester United against Fulham game. And the deadline for team announcements has been brought forward 15 minutes. So it's now 75 minutes before kickoffs is the embargo released for teams announced. So if it's an 8 o'clock kickoff, you should be able to see who's playing by 6:45. If we look at the stats from last year under cloud scoring compared to last year under Sky scoring, the vast majority of people went up. Out of the top 25 scorers, only 4 came down, and they were Erling Haaland, William Saliba, Mohamed Salah and Heung-min Son. Everybody else went up. The highest scorer was Rodri, closely followed by Palmer and Phil Foden. They all scored more points than Erling Haaland, even though under Sky system he would have been the highest scoring player. Whether that means that you need to have the most expensive defenders is a different story. The TFF pricing system has most defenders reasonably priced compared to the attacking strikers. So in Sky, we would have had Haaland priced at, say, 12 million, and you'd have had the likes of Virgil van Dijk priced at very nearly 10 million, so only about 17% saving. Whereas if you look in Telegraph pricing, Erling Haaland is priced at 8.5 million, and then Ben White is at 4.6, so just over 50% of the price. So you're going to get a lot more value out of your defensive players in Telegraph than you do in Sky. People used to the overhaul plus 50 transfers. How different will this game be with no reset period and only 40 moves available? Well, I think it's going to be very different. It's going to be more like the halcyon days of Sky. If you wanted to have a captain on a Saturday, Sunday and Monday, you would make a transfer for a player maybe playing on the Sunday, and then you would have a captain change then for that player on the Monday, or vice versa. But it will be like the Sky game used to be, where there were only 40 transfers, and they originally didn't have an overhaul at all. Then they had one overhaul at the start of the season, and I think the reason why the overhaul was moved to the midway point of the season was only due to the World Cup period. Overall, I think you're going to need to be very cute on how you select your original team. You don't want to be putting yourself in a position where you're going to need to use transfers quickly. There will obviously become some cheaper enablers that emerge during the season, a bit like Palmer last year. I think he was in most sides by about game week 7. But with only 40 moves, you're going to need some for fixture changes. You're going to need some for injuries. You can't be using too many on what I would call frivolous moves, like making a go for a single captain day, or switching around your cheaper players because they've had a couple of days where they've not hit a passing tier, or they're defenders and they've let in 3 goals or something similar. One thing I would suggest, you're going to need to plan. We've got a planner available for people to use on the Patreon. A lot of people that did well in Sky previously have used similar tools. How many transfers are you hoping to have at Christmas? 30 here. I think 30 is probably a little bit optimistic, but I'll be aiming for very similar, I imagine. Hope to get there maybe by 25, so 15 in the first half of the season and 25 in the second. definitely going to be planning as far ahead as we can. We've got the fixtures available all the way up till October now, or the end of October, shall I say. So you'll get November and December to come, which might be a couple of single game days. But we all know that with Champions League ending now into January, you're not going to get too many of the big teams having the single game days on Mondays and Fridays, because they're always going to be playing Champions League sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so their games will be on Saturdays and Sundays. You might get the odd Newcastle, they might have a Monday and a Friday consecutively or something like that. But when we see those, everybody will know sort of what the players are, who to go for, and we can always use them for sort of chain moves, the old daisy chain, taking somebody out that you don't want via somebody for a couple of captaincy games and then moving on to somebody that you do need. Those parts of the Sky game that everybody used to love and plan for, they're still going to be part of this game. Bear in mind you do have 10 transfers less, so you do need to be a little bit more careful. So 2 questions here, sort of going at the same problem from different sides. With the max captain rule, is it easier to go without the big hitters and spread the money around? And are the big gun players, Haaland, Salah, etc., essential with the new best captain rule? Well, I guess we're going to find out. It's very difficult to say. The new max captain rule, because there is no captaincy available in TFF, is that whoever is your best scoring player on any particular game day is going to be automatically awarded double points. Max captain, you can't go wrong. So big hitters are definitely going to have the best chance of hitting the captaincy halls. But how many are you going to have on any one day? Well, that depends on where the fixtures are. Haaland and Salah don't play often early on together. They're mainly on different days, apart from 2 where they're both on a Saturday. You can have a look at the fixture calendar on the planner to see who's playing where and when. But just because they are playing together on certain days doesn't mean that one of them can't get a good score. And it doesn't mean when they're playing on opposite days that either of them get a good score. We saw from the original table that the 3 high-scoring players last year didn't include Haaland and Salah under cloud rules. So it could be that if you've got someone like Rodri, or a Palmer, or a Foden, or anybody else on any given day, anybody can have a good day. The only thing that is certain is the more people you've got on any given day, you've got a better opportunity. But because you've got more on a Saturday, if you've got less on a Sunday, you've got less chance of getting the captaincy correct. So I think it's going to be a bit of a moot point. You're going to want the heavy hitting guys to boost your score, and you're going to need to have those supplemented with enablers somewhere or another, and you can guarantee that sometimes your enabler is going to flop and sometimes he's going to do well. Pays your money, takes your choice. Be interesting to see as the season moves on how people do with the max captain rule and see which players are actually doing best on whichever day. Who do you think will be the surprise enabler for tiers this season? Any on the radar? Well, at the cheap end of the market, there is a whole plethora of defenders under 2.5 million. Difficult to say which ones will be the best now. Chris Richards is a name if either Anderson or Gehi move on from Palace. He's round about that price. But I had a look through, there's a good 10 to a dozen that look like they're going to play. So any of those that end up doing well, get them in your team. On to questions about players. With goalkeeper save tiers increasing, is hunting for the expensive goalkeepers likely to get clean sheets less important this year? Well, when we checked on the stats for goalkeepers, their point scoring in cloud compared to Sky had changed very, very little. And with the pricing in cloud, they are reasonably cheap in comparison to what they were in Sky. So there's 2 ways to look at it. You get extra tiers and you can have cheaper players which will enable you to have better ones all over the pitch. We know that quite a lot of the players are in the striker position these days and they are relatively more expensive, so you could get a cheap goalkeeper. Pickford was one of the better ones in Sky last year. Everton are likely to do well. He's mid-price, I would say, for goalkeepers in this game. I normally say when it comes to goalkeepers, pick the rest of your team and then choose the best of what's available. If I can only afford one or two goal-scoring midfielders, Saka, Odegaard, Palmer, Bruno, KDB, Foden, Maddison, etc., there's enough choice there. Who do you think we should prioritise? Well, Saka always seems to play under Arteta. Palmer, if he can carry on last year's form, he'd be an absolute shoo-in. But will he? New manager, could be a new position. Bruno underperformed last year, top 25 for overall point scorers. KDB, again, he was injured a lot last year. One to watch, I would say. Foden will probably do well. Whether he'll do well at the start of the season is difficult to know with Pep. Maddison, he wouldn't be top of my tree for Tottenham assets, I don't think. If I was looking at one now, it would be Dom Solanke. Just over 4.4 million, I think, in Cloud game. And if he's going to be up front for an attacking Tottenham side, I think he would be one. So when it comes to the two midfielders, I think out of those, Saka and Foden will probably be my choices, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Palmer or Bruno both do well. Who is Pert Harris? Not heard of him before. Well, he was one that was top or in the top 20 on FF Stuff's ownership tables, and the reason being because he was the cheapest priced outfield player available. So I think what a lot of people had done was select their team, realise they didn't have a lot of money left, and Pert Harris was one that was in there. It wouldn't surprise me if he's still highly owned when we get to deadline on Friday evening. The talk of Anderson and or Gehi leaving Selhurst Park. Is it too much of a risk to pick them now? And does either leaving lessen the appeal of other Palace defenders? So I think in this particular game you're going to need nailed on players. I don't think I'd be touching Anderson or Gehi at the minute. There's too much uncertainty. You don't know whether they're going to be playing at Palace. You don't know whether they're going to be moving on. You don't know whether they're going to be playing at all. And when it comes to Palace, I would say they finished the season well last year. But if they do lose one or both of those guys, you can definitely see the appeal is going to be lessened. One thing I would say is they do have a cheap, what appears to be starting goalkeeper in Dean Henderson. So maybe that would be the way to go. Is Smith Rowe a lock? What do you do if he doesn't start on Friday? I don't think anybody can call Smith Rowe a lock, but he has been bought for big money by Fulham. He has started the last couple of friendlies for them. He has looked good and he has scored. And the beauty of Friday is you will be able to see. So what I would suggest, I'd make a plan to have him if you intend to captain him on Friday, and also have a backup plan where you've got somebody else if you want them. I don't think I'd want to go with Smith Rowe in my team if he wasn't starting on Friday, but if he does, then there's no reason why I won't start him and also give him the armband. Thoughts on Trent for the season? I think Trent could play very well this season. I also think he's overpriced in TFF, i.e. Cloud, compared to other defenders. If you have a look at the Arsenal defenders, they're all 4 point something, whereas Trent is 5.2, I think. The Arsenal players finished ahead of him for points in Cloud last year. There's no reason to think that they wouldn't finish ahead of him for Cloud this season. If you're going to have a Liverpool player, I would suggest the most would go for an attacking one. Liverpool, even last year, looked to be better in attack than they did in defence. There's no guarantee with Slot that he's going to have shored up the defence. They might have, but we can see during the season. If it looks that Trent's getting forward, Liverpool are keeping clean sheets, you can always bring him in. So, Saliba or Rice? Well, I couldn't put you off either, to be honest. I think they'll both be very good in the Cloud game. The only thing I would say is Saliba is a defender, and we're probably going to have 3 attackers. If you're going to have 4 defenders, that only leaves 3 midfielders. Maybe you can look at your pricing structure, see who you've got where, see what slots you've got available. I think Rodri would be a shoo-in for most of people's midfields. When you look at the attacking players like Saka, and Palmer and Bruno, will you have room for a Rice? If you do, great. I very much expect people will have room for Arsenal defenders, so Saliba would probably be the one for me. A few questions that didn't fall into one of the 4 categories, so I've just listed them here as miscellaneous. Are there mini leagues available? Yes, we've got some set up already. If you want to set your own up, you're probably getting short on time now. You'll need to drop me a message on Twitter or Discord or WhatsApp probably tomorrow so we can get those set up for you. Is there a cash league? There's not an official Cloudy Sky fantasy football cash league, but Tim Barry, who I've screened here, at Can I Just Shock You on Twitter, he is very reputable. Even though he is an Evertonian, I don't hold that against him. And he is running a cash league. If you drop him a message on Twitter, he will get back to you with details. Can people join mini leagues after the season has started? In general, yes, people will be able to join mini leagues, but the cash league, we are making sure that it's only available if people have joined before the season starts. Any plans for more content? Well, yes, today on Fantasy Football Hub, there is a introduction to the game with top tips and stats. If you take a look at that, anything that's been discussed on any of my shows, you'll find more data and stats that go with it. We will be doing more content on this channel. I've got 2 shows a week lined up. This is the midweek matchup show, and we're going to have Friday Night Live on Fridays. Coming up this week, it will be at 6:45 and it will be live, just a countdown through the team news and through the Cloud Fantasy Game deadline. We're going to have some bits and pieces on the screen, hopefully some questions from guys in the chat. If you want to join us on Patreon at Cloudy Sky Fantasy Football Show, that's where you'll find the transfer planner. Follow me on Twitter or X at Cloudy Sky FF Show, and we have a Discord channel now as well, Cloudy Sky Fantasy Football Show on Discord. So to get yourself signed up for Cloud Fantasy Football, off to www.cloudfantasyfootball.com. You'll see the 2 images on the screen, sign up and rules. Have a look through the rules so you know what you're doing. And then on the sign-ups page, just fill in your name, your team name, your email address, your Twitter handle. If you don't have one, just leave it blank, and your Telegraph Fantasy Football team ID. Remember to leave your team public, click submit, and then we'll do the rest. And just finally, a preview of what's coming up. As I said, we've got Friday Night Live. Episode 2, it's all kicking off. That'll be on Friday night. Deadline is at 7:15. I know I keep mentioning it, but it is important, and we'll be live on air at about 7:15. So that's it for today. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, leave us a like. If you want to subscribe to the show, please do. And we'll see you on Friday. Bye for now.